All right. Looks like everything is up and running. We've got about another minute. Somebody's here watching. Troy, good evening. And Douglas, welcome. We're here. Hopefully we're going to have some kind of real information to give you. All right. The crowd is building. We're doing well. If you're watching live, say hello in the chat there. That way I know who's watching. Otherwise, it's just a raw number. Dave's here. And Charles Wilson. Can I describe how I dye and shellac the inside of a half-blind drawer? I don't. I don't color or finish the inside of my drawers or the outside. The only thing that really gets finished is that top edge, maybe down the dovetails. Usually it's just the part of the drawer front that's the remainder on the half blinds, and then the drawer front itself. Brian's here. I'm not exactly sure who JYT is, but I probably do. John's here. Jeffrey's here. Wow, we got the whole gang. Vincent's here. We're doing well. All right. So I think I have 8:01. So I guess we'll get started. The crowd is building slowly here, but we're building up some. Bob's here too. Good. So welcome to No BS Woodworking Tuesday Tips. I'm assuming you guys can hear me just fine. Brian Lewis is here. Awesome. And Kevin. That's great. Martin. Boy, the gang's all here, folks. Everybody. All right. Nobody has said they can't hear me or see me, so I'm going to assume that both of those things are functioning properly on the interweb there. Leo, I didn't. This isn't roll call. I wasn't. You don't have to. Welcome. Thank you for coming. All right. So tonight we are going to hopefully talk a little bit about different ways to prepare for your whatever projects you're going to build. For me, that all starts with the design, and I've got 3 different methods by which I do my planning. I either good, Leo's. Vincent says we're loud and clear. All right, good. I have 3 different ways by which I do my project planning, and they basically are I use a 3D drawing program like SketchUp or Fusion 360. I've started using a little program called Rhino. If Carol shows up, she'll be happy. Fred's here too. Nice. I do full-size drawings, which if you come for a class and it's a project class, chances are we're going to do a full-size drawing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those. And then I have right in front of me what I call layout sticks or story sticks, story poles. They go by a handful of different names. And these are full-size, but they are sectional views. So you don't necessarily get all the information that you get on a full-size drawing, but a piece of furniture might only take up this much room as a story stick, that versus an entire drawing like what I have behind me. So, oh, Doug's here too. Awesome. We're really we're climbing up there. So, where I normally start is I'll start with a photograph of something, or I will try and design something, depending on what it is I'm building and why. And over the since last summer, I've had a class that we've been building a couple of desk-on frames. They look kind of like this. Let's see if it'll come up. There we go. And I have the story stick for one of those here, and behind me is the drawing that we did in class. And I wanted to talk about this because the great thing about a full-size drawing or a layout stick is it allows you to puzzle through what you're doing, so that you can work out not only the design details, but the construction details. Oh, Skip's here too. Very nice. So I'm going to switch my camera. The shop looks very clean. Did the maid service come? Ah, Frank's here. Awesome. I'm going to switch, and I'm going to switch up my camera. Hopefully I get the right one here. Yep. So this is a drawing that we did in class for that desk-on frame. And what you'll see is I've actually got two views on here. I don't know how well it's going to come up on the camera aspect of things here, but I'm going to, yeah, it looks like you can see things fairly well. I had a lot of patterns for this piece because this is a piece that I had made for multiple customers in the past. And the guys in the class, this was the piece that they said, hey, we really like that. Can we make it? So if you look at it, you know, everything you see here in black is a front view. And then what I try to do is overlay another view on that same drawing so that I don't have to redraw the legs or the apron cutout or any of those, the step backs for the moldings and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if you can discern the blue lines here, but this desk doesn't have 3 cabriole legs in the front. But everything in blue is looking at the end of the desk or the side. So I've plotted out the slope of the angle on the fall front desk. I have my total cabinet depth here and placement of my apron, of my rear cabriole, pardon me, my rear cabriole leg. What we didn't do was draw out the apron cut or the side rail cutout for that, simply because we had the front rail already drawn out, and to overlay a side rail cutout on there probably would have just been confusing. So I have patterns for that, but there was really no need to draw it there. The only thing that we got out of this was our shoulder to shoulder measurement for our case side, and that allowed us to add in the tenons on the end and go ahead and calculate, you know, just right from the drawing, calculate how long everything had to be. And that's really the primary benefit that I see to doing things full sized. You not only get a look at how things are going to proportion out, but I can then, as I cut pieces off, I can use the full size drawing to cut things to length, rip things to width, that kind of stuff. So let's say I wanted to figure out this divider here. So the pull-out slide that I'm looking at the front view now, the pull-out slide that holds the lid up is in this space right here. There's a drawer over here. and I want to run through tenons through my drawer blade and my writing surface. The easy thing to do is cut off square up a board, bring it over, lay it right on the drawing, put a tick mark where my next piece ends, and then I can cut that piece to length right from my drawing. So I'm not doing all the math over and over and over again as I build a project. That's the wonderful thing that you get when you, I'm going to drop that down. Oh, Douglas, Robert's here, Larry. Wow. Hard to see the plan clearly, but my description is good. Again, it's, live woodworking, folks. I tried to do this as an overhead thing, and it was even worse for you guys to see it. So I'm doing the best I can, given the fact that we're just live here, and I can't really sort of pre-film this and then edit it so that it looks great, because then you would enjoy it, and that's not really what this is about. No, I mean, just kidding. Again, I'm not trying to push you in a specific direction. As far as, I'm not trying to show you plans for a specific project. That's coming down the road. So the way that we did this drawing in class was I worked from the layout stick that I had created. I'm going to grab the camera here, and we're just going to move over. I know you're looking at my shirt, which doesn't really help you very much, but if I move in here, turn that around. Yes, the shop. I have a class in here this week, and you're going to see here shortly, we're going to talk a little bit about the 3D modeling programs, and you will see desk on frame. That's what I'm trying to see first. I brought another desk over, and we'll talk about that in a minute as far as the layout stick goes. But I don't know how much you can see here, but if I move this down, you can see clearly that I've got a pattern laid out on here for my cabriole leg. I have my aprons, my mid molding is showing up there. And then I've got, the slide, the writing surface, and then all the stuff laid out on top. So when we did the drawing, literally I took, and if I flip it over, so that's the height view. The front view gives me my overall height. There's my top of my desk is here. My floor level is way down here. And it filled in all the blanks of what we needed for leg height, the thickness of the molding, the reveal of the drawer blade above the molding. This is on part of the interior. There's a drawer inside. If I go back to that photo, you can see below the pigeonholes, so that's the drawer front that you're seeing there. They're kind of curved. They have the little brass knobs right in the middle. Okay. So if I go back to my camera, because that's really what I'm trying to do here. And again, this is, we're kind of limited to what I can and can't do on a live stream. But I used this when we started laying out the drawing. I rolled out my paper on a piece of plywood. We drew a floor level. I took my stick and laid it in there, and I didn't have to recalculate, how big is this drawer opening? I could just transfer those marks directly from my 25-year-old layout stick. That's the adder advantage that you have doing a layout stick. It's not only more compact than a drawing, but they last a whole lot longer than a paper drawing. Okay. So if I flip my stick over, that, like I said, that's my height view on this side. If I flip it over, I also have my width view. So I had it upside down there. But I think you can see where I've written in the word drawer here, drawer here. This is a spacer. There's the case bottom, top rail. These are drawer dividers, vertical dividers. There's the top of a leg. And down this end is the top of another leg. Again, this is probably a 25-year-old layout stick. It may not show up the best on the screen. Oh, Patrick's here. Awesome. And, the great thing about this is, once again, everything is full size. So when we wanted to figure out how long that bottom board was for the upper case on this desk, we squared an end. I'm going to see if I can't widen up a little more, which I don't think I can. I'm as wide as this camera will go. So if I kind of pull back there, so my upper case runs from just where my finger's barely on the camera all the way over to off camera on that side. It's already drawn in full size. I could lay the stick right onto my case bottom, square up one end, lay this right on there, transfer the mark for the other end, cut it off on the saw, whether I'm using a track saw or a table saw. I used the table saw. We certainly did during the class here over the last 9 months or so. If I switch, this week I've got a class in, we're building spice boxes. Last week I had a class in where we were building this desk. So I'm assuming you guys can see the desk, because that's what's on my screen. Let's hope it's on what's on yours. So this desk, I copied from one at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. The original was in mahogany. When we did the class last week, we started with, again, I have a full-size drawing of the end of the desk, but we were building almost exclusively from my layout stick. So this layout stick is probably about 15 years old, maybe a little more. And it's not as oxidized as the other one. And you can actually see the opening, the drawer openings, all of the details of this piece a whole lot better. I don't know if you can make out on camera, but this is my height view right here along this edge. Everything in pencil is done. That's the height view. And then what I do is I turn the stick 180 degrees, and everything in black ink is part of the width view of the desk. So this is my writing surface. This is the little base, and then all the dividers are laid out in here for the interior where the pigeonholes are and all that stuff. I don't think I have a picture that I can pull up. If you look on my website under my portfolio, under desks, you'll see this desk. And there should be a shot of, actually, if you look on the classes page, there's a shot of it with the gallery inside. But, from the case down, you've got the drawer. There's two little drawers on either side, and then a long drawer in the middle that the quill drawers, that's those little drawers on the side, function to support the lid. So all of these details are drawn out full size, which means when we go to cut things, rip things to width, cut things to length, we can use the layout stick instead of a ruler or a tape measure in order to get it. If I flip that over, what you've got here is a sectional view. So if I look at the top 6 inches of my desk, you can see where the slope is coming in. I've got a mid-molding drawn, and this is for the secretary bookcase on top. And then I've got the top of the desk drawn in. This starts to tell me, okay, here's how wide my desk is up at the top. What I've got over here is, if I continued the original drawing of that slant down, this is the edge of my case side. And then I drew in the lower part of that slope. So if you imagine this coming around and sort of lining up with this piece, it's on the other drawing that we know how far it is from here to the writing surface, which is right at that point. So we have that distance, and what this gives us in the drawing is the width of our case side, or the depth of our case. The whole thing about are there any hidden drawers? Yes. And actually, if you look around long enough, you will probably find a little video from years and years ago of the first one of these desks that I made. It was delivered to a client in the Cincinnati area, and I stopped by Popular Woodworking when I was there, and Chris Schwarz and the gang wanted to see exactly what I had built. I told them that I had built this really cool desk, and he did a little video of me opening up the desk and then pulling out some of the secret compartments. So I don't know what Chris would have called it, but it's out there somewhere, I'm sure, because everything that you get on the internet is there forever. It's out there somewhere. So look around in the interior. There's a couple of really cool secret compartments for this particular desk. And as the 20 years ago, did you start with a story stick or a full-size drawing? Which came first? This desk was done solely as a layout stick, because I've done so many desks. It was easy to sort of, okay, these are the sizes. I start with a tiny little hand sketch, and I put in, as I scale things or off of photos, or if in this case, dimensions that I took off the original, I take those and then I plot them out onto my layout stick. Hopefully that sort of answers that. Douglas says something, he sections that. I'm not sure what he means, but whatever. Oh, Joe's here. Cool. So to me, layout sticks tend to be the way that I start. If I'm having trouble, or if I'm teaching a class and I know that the folks in the class are going to have trouble just looking at a layout stick. And that, to me, is exactly where programs like SketchUp and Fusion 360 and things like that come into play. So this is the spice box that the class is building this week. I'm going to switch up that camera. I don't know if you guys are seeing an inset of the camera as an overlay, picture in picture on top of the drawing or not. Oh, section drawing that is split. Do you have a measurement written for that length? So yeah, what I do is I have a book that I put, once I draw things out, I then write down all my material lists in the book, because that way, if I want to build the desk again, I just pull out the book, and I know my case sides are 7/8 thick, 25 inches wide, and 38 1/4 long. And what are you getting the length from that the split is off of? Oh, so, all right, now I'm getting what Douglas is asking. So I'm going to pull the camera around before I go into the spice box, and we'll see if we can't sort of get that stuff sort of figured out. Let me see if I switch my camera down to this one. I'm kind of in the ballpark. I'll switch back up to this. All right, so we're back to the drawing of the Philadelphia desk. So the depth of my cabinet, or the width of my case side, runs from this point all the way down to this point. And if I grab a tape measure here, or I'll use a folding rule because I don't have a tape measure in my cabinet at the moment, that depth is 25 inches. So that was taken directly off the desk, but I can do that any way that if I'm working from a photograph or some rough dimensions, or in the past it has been, hey, I have a customer might say, I have a space that is 42 inches wide. I can do something about 2 feet deep. what can we build to put in there? So at that point and I can only go, 41 high. So at that point, it's like we start to figure out what kind of piece of furniture they want. And then I draw things up. If I'm drawing it for a client to look at, I'm going to do a full size drawing, because that way they're going to be able to visualize the whole piece. This is very much a shop working drawing on a layout stick. There's no, if I showed this to a client, they wouldn't understand it at all, even remotely. Okay. If I flip this layout stick over, if I want to know how I determined the placement of these things and this angle, the top of my desk, and I'm going to see if I can't get it all in here. The top of my desk is up here in the pencil. So this is the height side of this drawing in pencil. So there's the very top of the desk, which is this point right here. This is the pigeonhole inside, a drawer, and a drawer inside. And this is the sub base that's underneath of that. So if you look on my website again, website's on the screen, you'll see under the classes a picture of the interior of this desk. And this is the writing surface. This is the part that the lid is hinged to. So right now I know that overall length, that height from the top of the writing surface to the top of the desk is about a foot, a little more, 12.5 inches, right? So what I did was, on a separate piece of wood, I plotted out 12.5 inches down, 25 inches wide, and plotted out what this depth was, and then drew in the slope, took those angles, and then I think I did it on the case side of the actual desk. And from there, I transferred that information to my layout stick, simply because now I have a permanent record of it. I don't necessarily know what that angle is. I just know that when I move this down so that this line, the top of the writing surface, is 12.5 inches from the top of my desk, these two sections of this angled, the sloped lid, should be in plane with one another and give me whatever angle I need to create my desk. Hopefully that makes some sense. Patrick says, my wife and I draw half of any piece of furniture to full scale, then draw it in SketchUp. Okay, all I do then is cut piece to fill in the pieces on the drawing. Oh, right, yeah, I got you. Exactly. So I'm going to switch back to the SketchUp model. So the class that's in here this week, like I said, we're building a spice box. It is a copy of a very specific spice box. And that spice box was, at the time, was owned by an antique dealer friend. And I asked if I could copy it and was given permission. So I went, and again, with just a little sketch pad, I drew just a box. Went down there, I took dimensions off the case, so I knew how wide the case was, how tall the case was, how tall the feet are, all the drawer opening dimensions. And then what I did was I held the sketch pad, the notebook, up against the moldings, took some tracings, and boom, I had everything I needed. You know, I knew what my case what my case depth was. I knew what the overall width was. I knew what the overall height was. And then you start to fill in the blanks. So for this class, okay, there we go. I was trying to get rid of the cursor in the middle of the board there. I don't know if you could see it or not, but no, I don't want to do that. So in SketchUp, the really cool thing is you can lay this out and see in 3D what the the piece is going to look like in the end. And it's good for an overall view. But what I can tell you is when we started planning out the drawing for the spice boxes this week, there was something that we were looking at in the drawing, and I think it was that bottom rail that's above the base molding there, or maybe it was another part of. Oh, it was the bottom of the case. I had turned the piece around in SketchUp, and we were trying to take dimensions off of there to get our drawing done, and we were kind of zoomed in on the rear side of the. I'll see if I can't rotate it in SketchUp right here. So we were dragging things out of here, looking at things, and from the drawing, hopefully you guys are seeing this live. Yep, you are. This section right here, the thickness of the case bottom, which is dovetailed into the sides, really didn't look like it was in the SketchUp model. Just didn't look like it was a whole lot different than my case sides and my case top. And I measured the height of the base molding at 5/8 of an inch, which meant we certainly weren't going to dovetail 3/4 of an inch up into that case if we made the case bottom 3/4 of an inch with the top and the sides the same dimension, because your 1/8 of an inch of your dovetails would be exposed above the base molding. So the idea is, for me, the drawing should give you all the information you need to be able to build the piece. The great thing about SketchUp is it lets you see the entirety of the piece, but it doesn't necessarily give you all those details. I was thinking, like I said, visually when I'm looking at the SketchUp model, because I'd drawn it quite a while ago and I didn't remember that the bottom was only 1/2 inch thick, I'm thinking, oh, it looks about the same. And then when I measured things, I'm like, it can't be. So I went back to my cut list in my book, and sure enough, the bottom is only 1/2 inch. But you can't really get that sense of scale of things so much from SketchUp or Fusion or Rhino or CAD or any of the other 3D modeling programs. To me, they have a use, and that use is, as you see, we can take this thing and I can click on a component. I can move the drawer out of the box. You can see the drawer runners here are moved partially out on this side. You can start to see how things go together in a 3-dimensional fashion rather than in 2 dimensions. So if you're using a layout stick or a full-size drawing, it doesn't give you that ability to rotate, move things, start to see how they're working. So I really think a lot of this stuff works together. Oh, that's not what I want. This is what I want. They work in conjunction with one another. I'm not saying that you need to spend massive amounts of time 3D modeling and then turn around and go sort of hog wild and do a layout stick and a full-size drawing. If you have the 3D model, certainly a layout stick will help you determine all the sizes much better than a SketchUp model, in the way, because when you start to puzzle it out, you start to plan and figure out, okay, I need to do this, then that, then this. When you start to figure out your steps of building the piece, to me, that's where doing the layout stick comes in, because once I have all my dimensions, I know what my case sides are, I know what my drawer openings are, all of that stuff. I can start to draw in those tiny little details, put in, dash lines for hidden mortise and tenon joinery. I can start to see, oh, if I mortise and tenon this way, I'm not going to be able to assemble the thing the way that I want to, because I have to bring two pieces in together, and I have this way, and then they have to slide in. We did that with the spice box this week. No, it was the desk last week. If we would have put those dividers next to the quill drawers, the writing surface was set into a dado from the back of the desk, and the drawer blade below it, into which those dividers go, the bottom of the writing surface and the top of that drawer blade. The drawer blade comes in from the front because it was a sliding dovetail into the case sides. So had we put mortise and tenon joinery on those drawer dividers, we would have had to sandwich it together, and the writing surface would have had to slide in from the back, and the blade would have had to slide in from the front, which is just completely physically impossible. So that's where doing the working off the layout stick or the full-size drawing is going to give you more than what you can just by drawing out parts in a 3D modeling program. So I'm not trying to push you towards one thing or another. Each one of these things has some benefits. Drawing something out as a full-size drawing helps you see a whole lot more of what the overall piece is going to look like. It's kind of the hybrid between the layout stick and the 3D model. The 3D model gives you the ability to rotate things, pull things out, pull drawers out, open doors, lids, all of those kinds of things. So you can start to see how it's going to look and function in use. But the layout sticks give you all of the detailed information about sizes, placement, and methods of joinery. So to me, they work together. You don't necessarily need to do all three. Again, that Tiger Maple desk, this is the layout stick I had, and I had a pile full of notes on how big the overall desk was, and I plotted things out onto it, and I've built multiple desks from this layout stick without ever having a 3D model or a full-size drawing. But for the class last week, we drew up the end view so that we could plot that slope that you were seeing on the back side of this, where I had split it, because we had the lid on the original desk was about 17 wide. Well, the rough material, the widest rough material I could get, was about 16 and a half, 16 and 3/4. So it was already starting out a little smaller. So what we ended up doing was shrinking the case sides down from 25 to 24. And by the time you modify the slope to accommodate the new depth of the cabinet, now the lid comes in at 16 1/4, which allowed us to joint the edge of the board, mill the piece down, cut it to width, and still end up with a single board for the lid, instead of now we have to glue on a 1/2 inch or an inch just to make a specific dimension. So hopefully that all makes some kind of sense to you. That's the kind of stuff that you can get by doing a layout stick. With every bit of planning you do, whether it's a SketchUp model, a full-size drawing, or a layout stick, you start building, and then at some point, the theory of the drawing becomes useless. Like the spice boxes we're making this week. we're starting the cases together. We've got all the dividers really rolling along on the cases here. Tomorrow they're going to be gluing up their cases and fitting the last couple of dividers in there. At that point, I don't really care about the drawing anymore, because when we go to cut drawer fronts, I'm not going to go look at the drawing and cut drawer fronts to the size on the drawing. I'm going to turn around and cut the drawer fronts to fit the actual opening. So the drawing, the layout stick, the drawing, the 3D model all becomes theory, and you build to reality. So the reality is I have a case together, I have dividers in it, and now I have to attach my moldings to it in this fashion. I have this much space. I drew up a 5/8 inch base molding, but had we, if somebody cut a little too deep on their dovetails, something got changed in the process of building, then you might have to make a 3/4 inch molding instead. So the idea is be sure to adapt. One of the stories that comes to my mind as I say that is I remember years ago being at the Baltimore Woodworking show. It was pretty early on when I started teaching, and the first 2 or 3 years that I did the shows, I mostly at the request of the show promoter, I brought tons of my furniture along and set it up in the booth, and it was a way for people to see the quality level and the variety of things that I made, and hopefully inspire them to take a class with me. So I had a couple of tall case clocks with me, grandfather clocks, and a guy came in with his wife, and he said, "Hey, you make grandfather clocks. I bought this set of plans from I don't even remember who, and I'm starting, I built the thing, and the parts list says my door is 8 inches wide and 36 inches long. But when I measure the opening is 8 inches wide and 36.5 inches long. So what do I do?" And I know it sounds like a silly kind of question. The answer was cut a longer door. Otherwise you have a gap that you have to fill. So you'd either have to glue something on to the top and bottom rail of your door opening, or you make your door longer to fill the actual space. And to me, it's always work from reality. Don't just go cut your parts up from a list. Even though I have parts lists for that Tiger Maple desk and the Spice Box this week, we only cut the parts that we needed to get the cases together. And then we start to cut parts, not from the parts list, but from the actual piece. When we make the doors for the Spice Boxes, we're going to measure the actual opening. We're not going to go to my parts list and go, well, the parts list says it's 1.5 inches by 14 inches long. And then we go look at all the Spice Boxes and they're 15. What do you do? Don't, just because you have a parts list, don't cut everything you have on the parts list on the first day. Some things you ought to wait until you actually get the case together and then cut things to fit the actual piece instead of the theory. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Any kind of questions out there? We got a good crowd here tonight. So hopefully I've explained to you guys the advantages and disadvantages that I see of each of my 3 methods of trying to plan my work. The whole idea here is I can create the parts list from any one of those 3. And if I do 2 of any of them, one becomes the double check for the other. So quite often I will do a SketchUp model and then a layout stick, or a SketchUp model and a full-size drawing. And then I compare the 2. And when I'm doing the full-size version of the thing, whether it's a layout stick or the full-size drawing, that's where I make the corrections that I couldn't get to when I was in SketchUp or whatever. So to me, I can make up a parts list. I can then turn around and create a shopping list for when I go select my lumber, whether it's in my lumber shed or I trek out to one of my sawmills. And I know what I have to buy. I know how wide things are, how long things are, so I can buy stuff. That desk lid, I tried to find something that was 17 to 18 inches wide. The most I could get was 16 and a half, 16 and 3/4. So I knew coming into the class, hey, that Tiger Maple desk lid, we're going to have to make a modification to the desk in order to make the desk exactly what we want. So hopefully, though, I've conveyed the pluses and the minuses for all of these different methods. Again, I'm not advocating one over the other. To me, if I was going to rank them, I tend to lean towards my layout sticks being my number one method of doing things because they're compact. I can take my dimensions right off here, and I'm doing a front view, a side view, and a depth view. I'm getting all three views in there. I have to have every last bit of information that I would need off of a layout stick to build the piece. If I'm doing a full-size drawing, I'm going to do the same views, a top view, a front view, and a side view, so that, again, I have every bit of information on there that I can do. If I have a layout stick already, which is the case on this desk on frame, I certainly don't need to do top view, side view, and front view. I can once I have, again, we only have two views on this big drawing in the back here, the front view and a side view. And that's more than enough, because between that information and the information on the layout stick, I've got everything 100% covered. And like I said, I can make up my cut list. I can make up a shopping list to go to the sawmill. I can pull things in. I can start to rough mill things, make things an inch or two long, half an inch or an inch wide. Start milling my material down and, give it that time to acclimate. All of that stuff. I've got all that information to be able to get that stuff done ahead of time, then start to build my piece. Okay, so questions are, what's your favorite method if you're designing a project from scratch? Again, probably it depends on if it's a project from scratch for me. I did a spice box that I took to, it was at the Fine Woodworking open house last weekend, the weekend before. I can't even remember. Time's been flying by. I had a photograph of that. I did a quick layout stick, and off I went and built the thing, because I've relied on these things for so long. I had the photo, I did my scaling, I laid everything out right on the layout stick, and then I went ahead and built it. That to me is my favorite. You might find that you need more information to start, so jumping right into the full-size drawings is the way to go. And then other people are going to turn around and go, I can model it up in half an hour. It's going to take me 2 or 3 hours to draw it. So I'm going to start with the model, see if I even like it, and then start to transfer that information to a full-size drawing to see if I've got proportions right, if I've got if I'm going to complicate the joinery so much that I can't get the thing together. There's so many things you can work out by doing either a layout stick or a full-size drawing that you can't do on a model, on a 3D model. Vincent wants to know, should a plan or stick say cut to reality or cut to dimensions? So when I run my fundamentals class and quite a few other classes that I do here, we make layout sticks. And what I tell people is make as many notes on your layout stick as you need to be able to replicate this thing 5 years from now, because you aren't going to have every recollection of every step you took to build a piece. So if you're doing a layout stick, if you're doing a full-size drawing, write down, hey, this is, you need to do this first. So if I bring my camera back over, you'll see it on camera here. I'm gonna switch my camera up here in a second and see if I can't pick up some of the notes that I have on that desk on frame. So if I switch cameras down to that one, yeah. So right here, this is depth at mid molding is 19 3/8. Start the angle approximately 5/8 of an inch above the writing surface. If I come down here, the bottom of the center drawer is up higher. This, if I go back to that photo of that desk, it's got a low boy base. So you have two deep drawers on either side with a narrower drawer right in the center. Okay. So somehow I got to convey that information on my layout stick. And the way that I did that was I just put a tiny little hash mark with a note. So if you're going to, oh, I'm already on the camera. I got to switch it to the wide one. There we go. Let's get this off camera because you don't need to see it. Not that it's offensive. It's just, So make notes, write things down, put things on your layout sticks, on your drawings that help you, that, like I said, hey, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, if you try and make this thing again, you have all the information that you worked out by trial and error, hopefully more trial than error, that you'll be able to read those notes, understand what the problem was and how you solved it. So to me, that's why the layout sticks, I have probably 100 drawings, full-size drawings that I've done of pieces over the years, plus all the ones that we've been doing in the last 10 or 15 years teaching classes. And they take up a lot of room. They're paper. So they you got to have them in a dry place. You have to keep them away from insect damage. You have to treat them like books. You have to keep them, they're fragile. They do dry out over time. The drawings fade. The layout sticks tend to last a whole lot longer unless your wife is helping you clean up the shop one day and she picks up a layout stick and cuts it in half. I'm not saying that actually happens much. When do you create a plan of procedure? So I do that mostly mentally at this point as I'm drawing it up. I know, okay, if I'm going to do that desk on frame, I've got to mill up my parts, get my upper and lower case together, those things. So I choose one. I either build the base first or I build the upper desk part first, and then I modify the other case to match it. So on my layout, I know that I've got an 1.125" setback between the outside of my base and the outside of my desk. So if I'm trying to hit a critical dimension on my desk and my lumber, my material is very limited, I build that first, and then I modify the size of my base so that I still end up with that 1.125" step back between the outside of the base and the outside of the desk. And that way I get all of those things worked out in my head based on the layout stick, the materials, and what problems I am foreseeing as I go down the process. So it's very easy. I don't create a punch list, as it were, until I get pretty far into a project. But you certainly could start doing that right from the get-go and say, okay, let's rough cut all of these pieces for the upper and lower case. That will help you determine the next step, which is, okay, I have to modify the base because my top isn't going to give me the material that I need. Like that Philadelphia desk, our lid wasn't wide enough to give us the 17-inch wide lid. We had to get it down below 16.5. So we modified the case sides. So there, to me, there was the procedure. Pull the material, get a ball, do the drawing, create the cut list, pick the material, modify the cut list based off of the material that you actually have, theory, reality, work to reality. So I needed a 17-inch wide lid. We only had 16 and a half. We needed in the rough, we had to cut it smaller. So you can see from the beginning, I'm starting to create that step-by-step procedure list. Like I said, I do a lot of it in my head at this point. I remember starting out really early on, and I would have notebook pages, just hundreds of steps, trying to puzzle things out. What order do I need to do things in? And quite often, you get started on something and, 30 steps into a build, you realize like, oh, wait a minute, I better do step 45 before I do step 31, because if I do 31, that locks me out of doing 45. So you can take it and create a step-by-step procedure list right from the get-go once you've started doing your drawing, and then modify it as you go. Once again, theory and reality. The theory is I have 75 steps to get from the beginning to end of my project. The reality is it might turn out to be, 60 steps. It might turn out to be 130. It just depends on the problems you sort of create or discover as you go through a process. Okay. Again, these things are going to help you puzzle that stuff out well in advance before you actually start milling the lumber. They happen before I even usually select the lumber, whether I'm selecting it from stuff I already own or if I'm going to a sawmill and picking it. This also helps me like I said, it helps me determine what I need. And then once I actually select the stuff, I can come back and make notes or modifications to the layout or the drawing that would help me compensate for shortcomings of material. Does that answer your question, Skip? Douglas wants to know if I use the free version of SketchUp. I've had trouble with my results using the free version. Perhaps it was me, I guess. Okay, so SketchUp used to have a downloadable free version that you could model on your desktop and do all of that stuff. Since Trimble has bought out SketchUp quite a long time ago at this point, the only free version is web-based. So I have not, it took a little while for me, having been a desktop user, to get used to. I don't have all the keyboard shortcuts on the web-based version that I was used to. There are things, it's a somewhat full version, but I don't have so like I drew up that spice box on the free version. It's a web-based product, like I said. The class is in here. I've offered to share that with them if I can figure out how to share the file with them. So it's not as easy as it was before when I had the desktop version. I could just save the model and then just either email them a link to the file that they could then copy it and download it, or I could just email them the file depending on what the size was. So it's not as easy. Patrick says he bought the yearly license for SketchUp. Yup. And it's for the pro, it's not inexpensive. It's not inexpensive. If you go to Fusion 360, it's even more money every month. But Fusion 360 has a massive amount more power and drawing ability than SketchUp does. It's also got a very steep learning curve relative to SketchUp. But once you do it, if you have access to CNC machine or Even if you have if you have access to a Shaper Origin or something like that, there are things you're going to be able to export out of Fusion and into those other processes, CNC or Shaper, that you can't do from SketchUp. SketchUp, it has some limitations. We used it at the magazine when I worked there to model everything that would get illustrations done in the magazine. So if you ever saw those cartoony kind of um, drawings of how things went together or whatever, set of plans, whatever, they were all modeled in SketchUp, and then those things, the images were taken from that, especially the exploded versions. The pro version is a good bit better than the free version, but like I said, it's not inexpensive. Uh, I like playing around with this Rhino. It's a one-time purchase, and then you just get the updates for life. SketchUp used to have a lifetime license, but Trimble's not really even sort of monitoring that. They certainly don't. They certainly did, haven't honored it, at least not in my case. Again, I'm not an anti SketchUp. I've used it a lot, and it's easy to learn. It's easy to work with. I find it more intuitive than Fusion, but then again, I haven't worked with Fusion anywhere near as much. Rhinos, I have to play with it a lot more. But like I said, you get the full version, and the cool thing about Rhino is if you have a Shaper, you can export things as an SVG file natively from Rhino. You can also, it doesn't have the processes that Fusion 360 has, where you can create toolpaths and things for CNC, but there's a lot of things you can do with Rhino that you can't do with SketchUp. Same thing with Fusion 360, but again, they have much steeper learning curves, and they're bigger, broader, more. It's kind of like using, if you have a Mac, iMovie versus Adobe Premiere. iMovie is made for people that just want to put together a quick video, interesting short or something from your kid's soccer game, or you're going to do a quick project and throw it out there, but it doesn't have the depth and the power that Adobe Premiere has. But if you want to spend the time to learn that, Adobe Premiere can do a ton more. So it's all of those kind of things. Bob wants to know, if you join Central Jersey Woodworkers Association, we offer a greatly reduced annual rate because of our nonprofit status. Way to get a plug in there, Bob, on joining the club. So no, really, Bob, stop listening. They are really a good bunch of guys and gals. I mean guys in the most gender neutral fashion there. The good people, lots of fun. I've done presentations at a bunch of their meetings, and they're just a great group of people, and awesome woodworkers. And they were showing up every year at the New Jersey Woodworking Show. Lots of fun, and you get to hang out with Bob. So all right, Brian, thank you. So if there are no more questions, we've gone the full hour once again, when I only plan these things to be 30 to 40 minutes. So thanks for coming out. I'm looking at the chat real quick to see if there are any other questions that are popping up. If not, any hope to the Northeast shows getting a good owner to bring them back? Scary friend. I'm not sure who that is. I'm hope that the shows are for sale. The last I heard, they had a prospective buyer, but I don't know where that's all gone. I haven't heard anything in the last 3 or 4 months. So hopefully, maybe the woodworking shows will come back, but who knows? As soon as I hear something, I'll let you guys know. If I hear anything positive, for sure. And I'm kind of hoping if they do come back that they're more than the shows, the Eastern version of the shows. Everything, the farthest west we would really go would be Kansas City. We, went to Houston once or twice, that kind of stuff. But we haven't, the shows didn't really travel, out west in a long time. So I'm kind of hoping if somebody actually does buy it, they turn around and make it into a national circuit again. It would be a lot of fun to get back out on the road and do some of this live in front of audiences all over the country instead of you guys sitting at home, sitting there in your underwear watching me on YouTube at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. So, all right. That's about all I've got for tonight. So thank you guys for, number one, coming out tonight, and number two, for supporting the Tuesday tips. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go to the website, sign up for the email list. I do send out notifications ahead of time so that hey, it's Tuesday night. Maybe I got to go watch Chuck because I got absolutely nothing better to do. Next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages of a variety of top coat finishes. So hopefully, you guys are interested in that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm looking here. James. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And I'm trying to remember. I think I did a thing last week after the shows. James says it was nice to meet me up there at the Fine Woodworking show in Connecticut. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. It was crazy how many people walked in and just said, hey, I really enjoy the Tuesday tips. Thank you so much. Great to meet you. So yes, it was great to meet everybody who came through the show up there. Looking forward to being able to do it again. And I will see you next week. And like I said, we're going to talk about my take on some of a variety of top coat finishes. So thanks for coming. Thanks for supporting this, and I'll see you guys next week.